Hi, my name is Jessie, and today, I don't know what I'm reaching for yet. So today, I'm going to tell you all about the books that I read in March. Hopefully I can fit the words in there. So March, as we all know, was the month that lasted a year. And honestly, looking back, I thought I read more books than I did, but I didn't. I thought I read 9, but I read 7. No, I read 8. So I wasn't off. Still, I read a lot of books. So the first book I read was Break Your Glass Slippers by Amanda Lovelace. This is her 6th poetry collection, I believe. I believe it's the start of a new series, but I'm not totally sure. So I never really know how to talk about poetry, even though I talked about poetry in my January reads book. Well, I'm not good at it. I really liked this book, but I like all of Amanda Lovelace's books, so... But this one, I don't know, something about it felt a little bit different than... I kind of expected it to be more like the Women Are Some Kind of Magic series than Things That Haunt. Wow, I can't believe I couldn't remember 2 words. In all of Amanda Lovelace's poetry, you can know that it's Amanda Lovelace writing it. But even then, those 2 series were different a little bit. Things That Haunt was definitely darker than Women Are Some Kind of Magic. Women Are Some Kind of Magic had its moments where it was dark. Overall, it was I'm saving myself and I don't need someone else to do it. It's I've been through all that, but I've gotten past it and I'm here now. But then Things That Haunt are kind of I feel in those 2 you feel the anger more, but I also haven't read them in a really long time, so I could totally be wrong. Who knows? This is based off my memory. And this one, I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember it too much, because I read it all in one night. I wanted to read it, I was excited, and I never went back and reread it, but I liked it. Because this one is, I really can't tell you what exactly the poems in this were about, but I can tell you they made me feel this sense of strength in myself, who I am and what I am capable of. But also another thing about this one that's different than Women Are Some Kind of Magic, and is that it has drawings in it. Things That Haunt do have drawings in it too, but they look different. But these are so cute. They're little doodles, and I love them. But they also have these pages of sky, the night sky is really pretty. Ooh, this drawing is really pretty. Love that. I love that. So this is part of the You Are Your Own fairy tale series. This was book 1 in that. Yeah, it came out in March and really good. That's, if I can't put into words what I want, but that is the best we're gonna get. The next book I read in March was Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, who are also the co-hosts of the podcast My Favorite Murder, which is where the title originated. And oh my goodness, I absolutely loved this book. It was funny, it was emotional. Georgia and Karen are definitely not in my age bracket, so they talk about their childhoods a lot, and they lived a life nothing like what I lived, but it was fun to see it and imagine it. I definitely related to the latchkey kid part, and I thought it was funny that the way that their latchkey life was compared to my latchkey life. But I also had older siblings, so I wasn't a latchkey kid, but I like to tell people I was. It makes me sound cool. Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered is a dual memoir about both of their lives as children and teenagers and young adults, how they got their interest in true crime and defining moments in their lives, because they have 2 separate lives, because they didn't meet until 5 years ago. It's all in the podcast and in the book. I got this book at Target one day because I was it looks pretty and it looks kind of spooky, but I had no idea what it was about. But also because at Target they had an exclusive poster that came with it, so I bought it, and then the podcast just showed up in my Spotify suggestions the next day, and I was oh, that's creepy, but I also should start listening. And I did, and it was really fucking good, and I love it, and I'm still listening to it, but I stopped for a while, and now I'm in the mid 150 around there, I think. And I very recently got to the part of the podcast where they had announced that they wrote the book. I don't know why I'm saying that, but I'm telling you because I want you guys to know. I like it a lot. And I kind of appreciate that it's not so heavily about true crime. It's mentioned here and there. They don't like go into deep dives of like the golden. They don't go into like deep dives of like the Golden State Killer, or I can't think of another famous murderer right now. Charles Manson or Ted Bundy. They mention a few stories of infamous serial killers. A few times they talk about like their close run-ins with what could have been really bad situations. Those are interesting. There's one that Karen writes about. It's really, really creepy that I really enjoyed. It was like one of my favorite parts. This is a really good book. I really liked it. I think a lot of people should read it. If you don't like reading, you should listen to their podcast. It's not like the book, so it's different, but they're both good. And they also narrate their own audiobook, and I love when authors narrate their own audiobook. Okay. After that, I read Taming of the Shrew, but I read the modern text version because I'll be honest, I'm not a huge Shakespeare stan. You know, I appreciate retellings of Shakespeare stories. I'm not someone who just goes and reads Shakespeare for fun. But I needed a classical monologue for one of my classes, and in the book that we have to read for that class, it said something like, if you're going for a Shakespeare monologue and you're younger, don't do Kate, go for Bianca. So I read through it to see if I could find a Bianca monologue, but Bianca doesn't have a monologue in Taming of the Shrew. Only Kate does, and it's like the end of the play, and the monologue's really fucking boring. And I was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play this. Like, why would I do that? I ended up picking something else altogether, but that's beside the point. I've never actually read the original Shakespeare story, but I've seen 10 Things I Hate About You a plethora of times, and I've read If I'm Being Honest, which I loved. So I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm sure I'd like the original story. But then I read the original story and I hated it, because in Shakespeare's version, everyone's an asshole. And then at the end, Kat, she turns into like nothing. She has no personality. She's not who she was in the beginning at all. And she's just completely submitted to Petruchio, which is some bullshit. Like, wow. It's not even enjoyable to watch anything happen in this play. So maybe if it was performed, maybe. But in just reading it, no. I didn't like any of it. It sucked. But I still love that movie, and I still love that book. After that, I read We Should All Be Feminists, but I can't find my copy of it right now. It's really small. It's an essay. It's like 50 pages, but the book is also like this big. The way that it's written, it comes at feminism and gender roles from a cultural perspective. I don't know what to talk about. After that, I read The Knockout by S.A. Patel. I got an arc of this book from NetGalley. I was really drawn to the cover art, so that's why I picked it. Did like it. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars on Goodreads, so I have a review over there if you want to look at it. I enjoyed this book. I definitely thought it had its flaws. The main character of Karina and the way she was written, or not necessarily the way she was written, just her personality. There were some parts where I was just like, she's annoying. Sometimes she was really stubborn about something, and I was just like, there's no reason for you to be stubborn about this thing, or for you to like be so adamant. I don't know if it's because of having read so many stories in this vein. I'm like, I know she's gonna change her mind anyway, and the thing's gonna happen, so you might as well let it happen. Or if she was actually unnecessarily being a little bit stubborn. There were some parts that I really liked, like all of Karina's friendships with the other female athletes at her school. I thought was beautiful. Karina like had this girl that she used to be friends with, but then started being a bitch and took their third friend who's on her side. So Karina's by herself now, but with her other friends. She basically tells off the girl who's being a bitch. I kind of enjoyed that part. But then the girl who's being a bitch was also really bitchy, so that was good. Like, she was a good villain. I don't know why I keep making wrap-ups. I don't have things to talk about. I should really take notes. But yeah, I went over it I put it all in my review. I was annoyed at some parts, and I was emotional at some parts, and some parts were really cringy, and some parts were really cute. And I think the only thing I didn't touch on in my Goodreads review was the love interest. He was so adorable. That's it. I liked him. I'm the worst. There are some parts where they just like wouldn't say things, or wouldn't talk to each other, or wouldn't tell each other certain things, and I'm just like, but why? Just say the thing and save us all more time. But that's my problem with a lot of things now, whether it be books, movies, or TV shows. I'm just like, just tell each other the thing, and that's how it's solved. That wasn't a big thing in this, but there were a few moments of that in this book. But I did think it was really, really ironic, and I really liked how in this book, so Karina is a Muay Thai fighter, but she's an only child, she lives with her 2 parents, and it's really funny how sometimes Karina is just like, this isn't a career, I have to go to college, I want to go to college and be a computer scientist, and her mother's like, you can make a career out of Muay Thai fighting. And I just thought it was really cute that they switched it. Oh, this is part of my book club book, which I also have a blog about. We read I Might Regret This by Abbi Jacobson, which oh my god, I absolutely adored this book. It made me so emotional, but it was also really funny. I have a whole vlog about it, so I'm not gonna get super into it, but I really like the book, and I've started watching Broad City like halfway through, or when I was almost done with the book, so I didn't watch that much of the show while I was still reading the book. I got most of it after. I think I liked it better that I got to read the book and learn all about her life and how she met Alana and their history and how they came up with the whole show, and then go into it, because it just gave me a different perspective, because I watched it before and I was just like, whatever, it's fine. But then watching it now, I like really, really fell in love with the show, and I really enjoyed this book. It was a very chill read, because it's a memoir of Abbi Jacobson going on this road trip from New York to LA, and she kind of just documenting the whole thing. But a lot of it I found relatable as a 20-something woman living in New York. I highlighted some stuff. I wrote some notes. I will link this vlog somewhere, whether it be on the screen or in the description or both. But I like it. I think people should read it. And also, I said this a million times and it's gonna make me sound like a complete weirdo, but I don't care. This book has my favorite kind of paper. I'm very passionate about this. And this is a book I haven't read it yet, but I have it set aside for another vlog that I want to do sometime this week. I Might Regret This by Abbi Jacobson. Great. She has a whole chapter on bagels. Like, what more could you ask for from a book? Nothing. After I read I Might Regret This, or while I was reading it technically, I started it before it and I finished it after it. I read Anna Kay by Jenny Lee. I got this from Book of the Month, and I hate this book. Like, I love it. I think I gave it like 4 stars. And when I was reading it, I was like so in the world, and I really cared about almost all of the characters. There was probably 1 or 2 characters that I like didn't give a shit about. The way that the world is set up, it's like a bunch of rich kids in New York, and I live in New York, but I'm definitely not part of that world. And it's described as like a Gossip Girl meets something else, I don't remember, because all the kids are like Gossip Girl-esque, which sometimes when I was reading it, I couldn't suspend my disbelief enough, and I was just like, you're being a prick. Like, stop. Like, you have $1 billion, relax, it's not that serious. But overall, I was able to like put that aside enough, and I had such a fun time reading this. It was great. I read the sleeve before I started it, or while I was reading it, but I didn't really like remember too much, and I didn't realize that this book is a retelling of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, because I've never read Anna Karenina, but I've watched Gilmore Girls a lot of times, and the first couple of seasons they reference Anna Karenina a number of times, and I was just like, okay, but I didn't understand the references, but I was just like, whatever, it's not plot centric. But now that I have a general idea of what the story is, I understood all the references, which was a note that I wrote at the end of the author's note. Yeah, I wrote, now I get the Gilmore Girls references. But yeah, I really liked it, even though the characters were like prissy and some of them were shitty. But some of them were really sweet, and except for that one character who, if you read it, you'll know who it is, who's an asshole. Who's a fucking bitch. I'm not sorry. She's horrendous, and it's so annoying to read her parts. Like, she stresses me out a lot. But overall, this is a good book. Sometimes it's whiny, but for the most part, it's great. And also, I love Jenny Lee's writing style, because there are so many characters. She like weaves in and out of stories really, really well, because sometimes she'll have a character in a situation, and sometimes she'll go into a memory and it just happens so seamlessly, or sometimes she'll have one character in a room and they run into another character and she'll go into the other character's perspective. The transition is so smooth, it's so seamless. This is a good book. And the last book I read in March, I listened to it on audiobook, but I had already read this book a couple of times, so I know this once or twice, so I know the story already. It was another book that I did read for class, for a different class, because we have to do an assignment for one of my film classes where we pick a story that we would want to make a feature film out of. And that was actually something I thought about a few years ago. I wanted to see if I can write a script adaptation of this book, and then I just didn't do it. But now we're coming at it from a producer standpoint, and so I wanted to go over the story in my head again for one of the assignments we had to do. And I listened to it on audiobooks. I listened to it for it took me like 2 days, and this is one of my favorite books already. And then I listened to it on audiobook and it reminded me why it was one of my favorite books, and it's just so quirky and so cute and so funny and emotional. And there's one part where when I was listening to it on audiobook, I was like, oh, thank God. And then I went back and I found that part in the book, and I looked at the note that I wrote, and I was like, yes, I'm glad that I wrote that, because it's like the same exact thought that I had when I first read it. I don't know what page it was on, but I know it was about Ashish. And I love Ashish. He's so adorable. I absolutely love this book. It's one of my favorite books in the entire world. If you don't know what it's about, if you've never heard of it, if you've never read it, if you're thinking about whether or not you should read it, which you absolutely should, the answer is always you should with this book. It's about these two high school graduates named Dimple Shah and Rishi Patel, who meet at this computer science summer program where they have, like, it's kind of a competition. They have to build an app, and whoever wins gets to meet this famous computer developer. Her name is Jenny Lind, who's like Dimple's idol, basically. And when they meet at the camp, Dimple finds out that they are supposed to be arranged to be married, that their parents had a whole thing, but Dimple's parents never told her, but Rishi's parents did tell him, and Rishi was super into it because Rishi's like, I want to please my parents. Because Rishi's the oldest son, so that's like the most important thing in the world to him. But Dimple is very against it. She's very like defiant of her cultural expectations. She doesn't want to be married. She doesn't just want to be a wife. She wants to be a career woman, which she and her mom are very at odds about that. But Dimple is very stubborn. So the book is kind of about that. They end up having to work together. They're partners for the entirety of the summer program. I'm drinking TikTok coffee in my Harley Quinn mug. It's one of my favorite mugs. I also call everything like a TikTok recipe, so, because I know what I'm talking about. That's not the point. This is one of my favorite books in the entire world. And also, I just love the book jacket, because if you look at this, front of the book, she's holding a coffee cup, yes? And then on the back of the book, she throws her iced coffee on Rishi. And I think that's great. I want everyone in the world to read this book, because it's really good. I want everyone in the world to read all of Sandhya Menon's books. Like, you can't see it right now, but if you look at any of my other videos, up there, I have her third book, There's Something About Sweetie, up on display, because it's my absolute favorite book by her. When I first read When Dimple Met Rishi, I absolutely loved it. It instantly became one of my favorites because I felt this really deep connection to it, because it's one of the first times where I feel like I really truly saw myself represented in some kind of American media. I did connect to Dimple a lot in terms of personality, in terms of culture, in terms of like who we are. But then when I read There's Something About Sweetie, I just felt it so much more. This summer she's coming out with her third book in the Dimple universe called 10 Things I Hate About Pinky, which is going to be about one of Ashish's best friend from There's Something About Sweetie. And then also the title comes from the movie 10 Things I Hate About You, because she names them all after like rom-coms. Like this one's from When Harry Met Sally, and that one's from There's Something About Mary, neither of which are movies that I have seen. But I've seen When 10 Things I Hate About You, which I already said in this video, and it's one of my favorite movies in the entire world because it's just so good. I can't even tell you why. It's just amazing. And it has a great soundtrack. Yeah, I still haven't finished listening to My Dark Vanessa. I think I'm like maybe like a third of the way through. I don't know, but I just like some parts of it just get me so annoyed or like so angry on behalf of Vanessa. I'm just like, sweetie, this man is a pedophile. What are you doing? But that's not the point. It is a good book though. Like, I like the way it's written, but sometimes just emotionally I needed a break. We needed time away from each other. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in the month of March, and I really enjoyed all of them, unless I said that I didn't, which I definitely did. Out of all 8, I would definitely recommend 7 of them. That's all I have to say for this video, and I will see you at some point with another one to ramble on about different books. It's gonna be a great time. I think we're all gonna love it. Bye. Wait, hold on. Before I go, I already stopped recording and started again. That's why the frame is different. Before we go, can we talk about this for a second? It's so good. I love it so much. I've listened to it at least 342 times since it came out last Friday. What's today? Today's Wednesday, April 9th, and it came out on Friday, April 3rd. Yes, I've listened to it a lot of times. It's very important to me. Makes me very happy. This is definitely a no-skip album for me, and it's so good. I love it so much. I miss this band. Why is Alex huge in this photo? Move back. I love this album so much. It's so good, and I just want everyone to know that. That's all I wanted to add is just how much I love this album so much. That wasn't a proper sentence. I wanted to add how much I love this album, which is so much. That's a sentence. I know how to speak. Sometimes. Alright, I'm gonna go now. Goodbye.